Breaking it down in layman's terms today, we've got a lot of topics to talk about. B2C, B2B, B2A, the buyer's journey, customer mapping, omnichannel, personalization, and how do you get in tune with your buyers at the right time to close more deals, market better, and a whole lot more. I got a distinct guest here. She's got an extensive background. We've got Tanya Thorson. Now, Tanya worked a number of positions over the last couple of decades. She's a brand leader. She's a strategic marketer, a digital marketer, a leader. She's worked in the apparel industry for brands like Jockey International, Target, even cybersecurity in the SaaS space and B2B. Tanya, what it do in layman's terms?
Hey, so great to be here. Thank you so much, Doug, for having me. Thrilled to be here and share more about, the ideas that I've been writing about and talking about, especially how marketing can truly matter by connecting with people in the ways that count. So really glad to have this opportunity and to hang out with you for the next hour.
Well, I'm excited. You've got a wealth of information. We've connected on LinkedIn. I've seen all the content, and we're going to go hard in the paint about that content. But in my little brief introduction, you're a practitioner. You wore a lot of hats. You've done a lot of jobs, and you've really, and the P&L, profit and loss, you've always done results, whether it's the apparel industry, cybersecurity, your consulting agency. Did I get anything wrong in that introduction? I went high level. I know people can go to your LinkedIn profile, but I want to make sure I do you justice with your introduction.
You hit on the right components of my background. So thank you. And I can just elaborate a little bit more.
Please.
To be quite honest, yes, I've had this opportunity to work in different industries, from Land's End to LL Bean to, cybersecurity, as you mentioned, most recently at Network Perception. These industries are completely diverse, but I've kept noticing this consistent pattern, which has been the most successful marketing wasn't about reaching more people. It was about connecting with the right people in meaningful ways. So it's having that common language and having that common denominator and being able to be in a position where I can adapt to these new environments. And I think there comes this element of diversity of thought and ideation. When I can bring new ideas, new ways of thinking to the table, from a B2C apparel retail to a B2B wholesale retail to a B2B SaaS cybersecurity company like Network Perception, and still have that common denominator of performance in my people, performance in the product, and performance in the revenue. And that to me is where my sweet spot is being able to be that change agent, having that adaptability, being able to think outside of the box, and quite honestly, utilizing my team to help bring those ideas and those new ways of thinking and those proposals. Call it a marketing campaign, go-to-market campaign, whatever you want to call it, but really bringing that strategy into action and execution. And that's what's made me successful. It's not just Tanya. It's really being able to bring those people around me that have expertise, that I give them a voice at the table. If you saw my post today, it was about really acknowledging that, like really giving people not just a to-do, but actually the autonomy and the ideation and a voice. And I'm really proud of that because not many people do that. Not many people walk the walk, and I walk the walk in that situation.
You definitely walk the walk, you talk the talk, but you're a practitioner at heart, and it's not about just throwing terminology out there. And you've coined the methodology business to anyone, and we're really going to talk about that. But you can have practical applications. You've got strategic guides. You've got resources that I found on LinkedIn that's on your portfolio and on your website. So don't get it twisted out there, audience. She knows what she's talking about, but she's delivered the P&L and the results with different teams and different industries. And that's what's so appealing to me, is because we can talk about apparel marketing. We can talk about cybersecurity. You've worked in it. You've achieved the results, and you've really put your stamp of approval on it. And it's interesting that you've jumped to different industries, but you're a marketer, a strategic person at heart. Am I right with that statement?
Yes. The genesis of who I am is I'm a strategist. I'm a businesswoman. My career started as running and managing categories and then eventually in departments. And at the end of the day, it was always about the customer. always about identifying that white space, always about talking, what's the messaging, what's the handle, and always driving results. And those results are obviously a new customer acquisition as well as lifetime value, but those results also were from a P&L perspective. So having that business mindset with a marketing handle is really where I'm at. I think we sometimes have this stigma of marketing's about pretty creatives and let's do another infographic and let's talk more about brand, and brand is important, don't get me wrong. But the genesis of how I deliver messaging, marketing is through the lens of a business mindset. And I think we need to really start elevating that as a community, as an organization, as teams. We're the connective tissue with the teams today. I really see that as an opportunity for companies and businesses to really start breaking down those silos and starting to look at things more holistically instead of segmented. And that's where, we're going to talk more about the buyer journey and things of that nature, and we'll touch into that. But what I'm seeing is that we're still very segmented. We're very old school way of thinking. We've got this 2010 playbook that we just won't let go of because we keep thinking that we're going to be able to pick up the phone. And that's still relevant in some cases, but today the buyer is so different. And we're going to touch on that, I know, as we continue our
Yeah,
conversation.
let's do so. Before we get into business to anyone, which I'm eager to get into that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the concept of today's clients and customers, the journey. You've mentioned a few things, working in silos, being able to reach your clients and customers. There's a generational attribute to that as well. So let's get into the fabric of the customers and how our buyers buying different. So let's lay it out for you to play it out. Let's talk a little bit about the customer journey and how it's, or the buying experience. How has it changed?
Today, the buyer is in control. They're doing the research on their own. They're doing all the exploration. They're making decisions on their terms. And those terms are based on what you're providing them. And so as a marketer or as a business unit, you need to be putting materials and messaging and collateral out into those places where they're doing their search. It's a non-linear experience, and we all need to come to terms with that, and we need to accept that. Here's a stat that I love. 70% of the buyer journey is complete before they even talk to sales. So let that settle in. Think about that. So there's a Gartner stat too that I think is somewhere between 10 to 12 touch points a potential buyer has with your brand before they engage with you and want to pick up the phone or want to, request a discovery call with you. That means the real opportunity is meeting them exactly where they are, right when they need you. And so that to me is a huge mindset that we need to really alter. They're in control. The buyer today is in control. Self-directed.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they now have all of these resources. They're navigating this journey on their own terms, and they're doing this research across multiple channels. So, you think about Omnichannel. I'm a huge advocate. We started doing that when I was at Network Perception and being where the buyer is going to be. You can't just use email as your source of engagement. You can't just use the website. It all needs to be intertwined. Your website today is your storefront. That's how I look at it. So you got to set the stage. You've got to have above the fold. You've got to have the most interesting things that are going to give that potential new buyer confidence, credibility. You're going to give the brand credibility and give them a reason to click more. They want, buyers want to feel like they're in the driver's seat and they have a voice at the table. Just like I was saying with my team members, it's very similar. They want to feel like they're part of this journey, if you will. And so creating personalized content, tailoring your messaging to those personas that you're targeting, making sure that everything that you're providing them is a need and a value and a solution for their pain point, because trust and transparency today are non-negotiable. They seek brands that provide value, beyond the transaction, focusing, really on that long-term relationship rather than a one-off sale. Delivering that consistency, that tailored interaction across an omni-channel ecosystem.
There's a couple things that I would take from what you just
Yeah,
stated. One, simply put, buyers are in control. They're doing their own research. You've hit
you
the
bet.
numbers from Gartner and every other study. They don't want to deal with sales. They want to get all their information up front. The second part is, where do they get the information? With an omni-channel platform, whether it's text, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a digital campaign through social media, all levels, but getting the message. So the message has to be seen, it has to be heard or read, but
You
the
bet.
buyer wants to get through the process well before they become even into the decisional phase. So I get what you're saying. The landscape has changed and it's been generational as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have 4 unique generations in the marketplace. And so we've all been brought up very differently. And, listen, there's always going to be a B2B and there's always going to be a B2C. I'm not, disputing that. I think at the heart of everything that we do as business people, I don't even want to say marketers or salespeople, because I really think that those silos need to be broken, taken down, and really look at things collectively, is this B2A, business to anyone, anywhere, anytime, and always personal. So we're still reaching to a human at the end of the day. Now, the complexity of B2B is there versus B2C, but that's my methodology behind the B2A, the business to anyone approach. There within that, when you build that, you start building personalized messaging, which creates this connection, this trust, and it makes you relevant from a brand perspective. And so that's where the branding comes in, is indirectly you're providing resources and tools and value. If it's white papers, case studies, testimonials, thought leadership articles, you're putting yourself out there as with credibility and as a go-to, that is potentially what the end user is looking for, and that is a solution. Help me help you, basically.
Exactly. And I like the mantra of business to anyone. And from reading your material and seeing the content you've been putting out on LinkedIn, as well as your portfolio, et cetera, the B2C and the B2B, it's a blend with the B2A, but business to anyone, but using that mindset of you got to provide the content that's relevant to your buyers at the right time and for them to access it. So
You
at a
bet.
high level overview of B2A, give me a definition of business to anyone. Put it in Tanya's terms.
For me, business to anyone is identifying that it's a buyer first mentality today. And so when you are looking at driving business, you need to have that mindset first. And I would say that's the big unlock. Secondly, I would say the other component is really identifying who your target audience is, who your customer persona is, and then making sure that you're really immersing yourself into understanding what their pain points and what those solutions are that you may bring to them, and what that means from a human to human connection. And it's really taking the old school mentality of a product focused business or a product focused led messaging, really to more about a human focused solution. And I think that's the difference that we really need to come to terms with, and we need to talk through that collectively with our sales team, and with our finance team, so we understand the metrics that we're looking at and what that means, from a financial and a revenue perspective.
On that, I kind of piggyback on that. When you want to talk to your teams, whether it's the sales team, the finance team, it's a revenue team, it's marketing, it's getting sales and marketing in alignment on the same page to be able to go after your clients and go after them, but be able to target them correctly.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we might elaborate more in, but we can't forget about our existing customers. I've seen it so often, is once we get that sale, we've moved on to finding that next new sale. And I think there is this value and importance of having balance between new customer acquisition as well as the lifetime value of your existing customers. there should be somewhat similar tracks, but different messaging, and not forget about them. And so, we have to really look at the business from that lens. And I think the way we're siloed, we kind of forget about customer success. And to me, there's so many places that I could, share with you in my history of working, how the lifetime value customer has been the most rewarding from a performance perspective, and the units from an economic perspective, but also from just being your brand ambassador to help you bring new customers into the business, because they're an advocate of your product, and why not use them to help you bring new eyes and new ears to the business. And I really feel like that's a sore spot, but an opportunity for us to really to sit down and figure out what this buyer journey looks like from inception to becoming a customer for life.
You're speaking my language there, leveraging the voice and value of your customers, working with your existing clients and customers. Missed opportunity. You can lower the customer acquisition cost, because it costs more to go after new business development, and that's your pipeline. I understand that, but if you're not working with your existing clients and customers, keeping them happy, leveraging them as advocates, and I like to say, I'll say it in layman's terms, your best sales force are your current customers and clients. If you position them as advocates, but you got to earn that right. You got to put in the work.
1,000%, 1,000%. I mean, think of how you shop or how you purchase, don't you? I mean, it's really through, employee advocacy, or it's through testimonials that you've heard from other people who love this product. It's really about making sure that you're not forgetting the customer that is loyal to you, and that loyalty can go a lot further, not just in lifetime value, but as I mentioned, new eyes, new customers, new potential buyers to the marketplace for
No,
that specific brand.
no, it's very important, and it's obviously breaking down those silos. But the simple silo is just engaging with your current clients and customers. And I love the B2A framework. Now there are pillars. So let's just
Yeah.
poise for a second here.
Yes. Poise.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I try to have some poise in this interview here, but let's break down the poise factor, the framework under B2A, business to anyone.
Absolutely. So I look at, so to me, that the halo of everything that I do is strategy. It's strategic. There's outcomes. What are the business outcomes? That to me is like the upper echelon of the halo. And then business to anyone, anywhere, anytime, always personal. And then below that, there are there's 5 pillars that fall below that. And it's poise. And the first one is personalization. We've been talking a lot about personalization. It's, about understanding the real needs from the buyer, understanding them deeply, and, really having something that goes beyond a surface level gesture. To me, that is really what is important. You want to create that one-on-one personalization. The second for O is omnichannel integration. Again, we've touched on that, but ensuring that there's this consistency across every brand touch point, and having that messaging consistent, and making sure that you're in the places where the buyer is going to be. That, like we said earlier, it's a very independent environment today. The buyers have this freedom to be where they want to be, when they want to be. So you have to think about a mom, dad might be, putting their kids to bed, cleaning up the dishes, and then might hop online again to do some more research, if you will, for their company that they're working for. So we have to provide those resources, like interactive videos that are on our website, interactive chat bots, things that provide those resources. So when they're ready to do it, we have the resources for them to answer those questions that they're asking. The third, is innovation. Just being purposeful, creative, that, solving real problems, and really staying ahead of the game from an innovative perspective, making sure that you're thinking forward and it's with purpose. Strategy is, that to me is guiding every decision with a meaningful outcome driven goal. That to me is, again, the upper echelon of the halo. What is our strategy? Call it a go-to-market, call it whatever the hell you want to call it. But to me, you need to have that strategy, and that strategy needs to be in sync with all of your departments. You can't have a strategy within each department. Yes, we have responsibilities that we are independently responsible for within customer success, sales, marketing. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you got 400 marketing qualified leads. If none of them made it to a closed sale, it doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. And so it's really looking at the business through that type of strategic lens. And then EQ, emotional intelligence, connecting on a human level. People want to feel like they matter and that they're being heard, and understanding that and their emotions are really something that today is part of their making their decisions. And so we can't ignore that. And I think you said this earlier, Doug, we've got 4 unique generations in the marketplace. Everybody's got a little different feel, if you will. And so we have to really recognize that in how we approach our messaging. And I think this framework really buttons it up. And so, yes, it's something that I think it's when all of these elements come together, it's not just marketing that's reaching people. It's really something that's resonating with them and making it memorable. And I think that's the key. A lot of people can do marketing and put marketing out there, but how StrategiX, how I, Tanya Thorson, make it memorable is by providing insight and materials, but making it more of a narrative, more of a story. And we'll talk more about that as we get into Get Off Your Mask, the newsletter.
Definitely, we're going to touch on that. We're going to talk about the content you're putting out. But one of the things I want to take away from POISE and what you just said there, alluded to with insights, you've got a wealth of resources as well. So it's not like she's just talking about, oh, I just threw an acronym out there, POISE or B2A. You actually have a foundation. And if you go to Tanya's portfolio or online website, etc., she's got a lot of great resources. And we're not even getting to the newsletter yet, and I'm jumping to get to that. But the guides, the blueprint guides, the B2A guide, the Omnichannel blueprint, so to speak. So you've got a wealth of information. Really categorize each step and each action that we just talked about through POISE and B2A. What's the accountability with that? So are you constantly developing these guides in the framework? Because those are great resources as well.
I am. And, I think they're really important. They're materials and tools that are complementary. And that, we talk on Omnichannel, we talk about cross-functional champion, we talk about the leadership, how leadership playbook, and we talk about, just B2B, embracing this B2A approach through personalization, self-service, and omnichannel. There's many resources that I've been creating. Most recently, the one that I just created, which was about the buyer journey, and it's a blueprint for that. And so, yes, I think it's me trying to give back to the 20 plus years of experience that I've had in being a businesswoman in both, product, merchandising, product development, running teams that are anywhere from 50 to 5 to 2. I've worked in, both small companies and larger organizations. And I think just being able to give back and pay it forward is something that I'm doing through my messaging and providing these resources for the audience.
Well, you're doing an amazing job with those documents, those blueprints and everything else, because that speaks to a lot about B2A, speaks to the methodology of POISE.
Yeah.
And it's the content, because I'm going to keep it a buck, keep it 100% here. How I found Tanya was on LinkedIn. So I'm scrolling through LinkedIn. I keep seeing these videos and these resources. And then I go to her newsletter. We're going to get into it. Get Off Your Mask. And I'm like, this is some great content. So it all feeds back to each other. And she mentioned the word storytelling when you check out her posts. And we're going to get into the newsletter, because it's not just a typical newsletter. It's story, it's significance, it's relevant. You definitely put a lot of work into that. But the other documents are a lot of work. And of course, the video content. So you got to check out what Tanya's putting out there on LinkedIn. subscribe, follow it. But let's get off your mask and let's talk a little bit about your newsletter. And first of all, the name, the concept, and people out there, we're gonna show a little visual representation of the newsletter. Subscribe, read it, comment, and engage. Get off your mask. Give it back to you.
Yeah, it's meant to provoke some curiosity, a little provocative, I would say. The phrase works on two levels. On one hand, it's really a call to action. Get off your behind to make things happen. But more importantly, it's about stepping away from this outdated mass marketing approach, spray and pray. That's the old school mindset of, broadcasting the same message to everyone and hoping something sticks. Doesn't work anymore like that. I mean, it might in certain situations, but the majority is not looking for that either. So to me, it was a name that I put out there, and I wasn't sure people would get it. And then one of my mentors, Dustin Cohn, who I worked with at Jockey International, I shared it with him, and he was like, "Damn, girl, that's great. You need to trademark that." And I haven't yet. But he's a marketing connoisseur, and when he gave me the green light, I was like, okay, this is good. So
it's
yeah,
definitely a good read, and it's great visuals, and we can talk about a few of the topics on it if you'd like to. Any ones? I mean, all of them are great. And when you put out usually once a week, or what's the
once a week on
frequency on
Sundays, I build out. We build it out and publish it on Mondays. And really, I think the difference in my newsletters are two things. I always try and relate it to something current. And I always try and make the information more about a narrative, more about a story, because I think that is stickier and you remember things more. One of my favorites and is more recent was the Jerry Maguire one. I forget now. I forget what the title of it's called, but
quantum leap, not
quantum leap. Yes, yeah, absolutely. And thank you. What I really loved about that one was just the parallels of how that movie, which I know is dating me back to 1996, I believe it was, but just how the references of, just how they associate, and there's so many parallels to my methodologies, my POISE, talking about personalization, omnichannel, innovation, strategy, EQ, etc. And I think that's, to me, what is making things stickier. And I feel like, keeping with that momentum, I believe we've done 38 newsletters. And so that's my methodology. Yes, I could talk about the top 10 marketing, things you need to do to drive new customer acquisition. Yes, but I think we can all agree that, we can pull that through other resources. What I'm trying to do is create this narrative that makes you understand some of those itemized list of things to do to be a great marketer or a great strategic thinker or a great business person. And what makes me tick is really how I try and convey in my newsletters. And so that is kind of the genesis of my newsletters. And we think oftentimes that we're, getting stuck in this generic messaging, but I'm not. Like, I'm really trying to push the boundaries, kind of break down those walls, and really start speaking a little bit more truthfully that will resonate with people. And I think that, to me, is what's setting me apart from all the others.
It does. And I can speak to it because I've subscribed to the newsletter, and you alluded to the stories within the stories. It's relevant content. You had a post regarding commercials in the Super Bowl, spotlights, cultures and brand identity. But each segment has something that ties back to POISE or Omnichannel or B2A or whatever. You're tying the fabric within the story, and it's not just, hey, here are 5 things you need to do with ChatGPT to close more deals, and write 5 items that how to engage with customers. Now, I made that up, but not generic stuff. You're putting stories behind the story. Are there any other newsletters that pique your interest that are your favorite ones?
They're all so good in so many ways. There's a uniqueness to each of them, yet there is this common thread that I'm able to weave into all of the narratives. A couple other, things that I've focused on is more of this mosaic marketing. And I think, Doug, you and I spoke on this earlier. It's really bringing that to some of the newsletters. So there's a handful of those that talk about where you really keep blending, you're blending the heritage with fresh perspectives. You're honoring the brand's story, the heritage, while still staying relevant. Think of it like a mosaic. Each piece is unique, but together they tell this cohesive story. And one of the newsletters, I touch on LL Bean's campaign called Be an Outsider. They nailed this. They kept their heritage front and center, yet stayed fresh with modern collaborations like their recent partnership with a musician called Noah Kahan. It's the perfect balance of that legacy and that innovation. So it's really trying to create some of these vernacular that are sticky and that resonate with the audience. Because when you think of mosaic marketing, it's a culmination. It's really coming where a bunch of things are coming together. And this in particular is showing how, each piece that I brought to this newsletter is telling this cohesive story.
It
I don't know.
definitely resonates, the story behind the story. And then you always keep it relevant and responsive. You did a post recently on influencers. You talked
Mhm,
about the Rogan experience and everything
mhm.
else. So what I love about your work and your content on LinkedIn is it's always relevant, it's always new, but you're always drawing like insight from relevant examples. You're using the word
Absolutely.
relevant a lot, but the point is it's on point and it's just not some cookie cutter posts that you can get from artificial intelligence. And we're going to get in a little bit about AI, human to human and engagement coming up shortly. And I definitely love the concept of the fabric of personalization and storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And not having this linear approach. Like I'm a B2C, B2B girl and, B2A ultimately. So I'm bringing people like Alex Earl into, the most recent newsletter. I'm bringing other people in that might not be the expected. And I want to make it fun and I want to make it light, enlightening. And, those images that I build, let's take a labor of love. I mean, it takes me time. I don't have anybody working behind the scenes for those photos, for those
You don't have a ghostwriter writing that?
I
Uh,
don't have a
team of
ghostwriter.
75 people and because it looks like there's a lot of work into that.
Yes. And so I'm to me, I'm really proud of them. And yeah, to me, you'll just keep seeing those every week. And they still continue to, fall within the B2A, having that, that aura of it, if you will, but really providing materials and information that are relevant in today's world.
I mean, you're definitely leveraging the LinkedIn newsletter, get off your mask, but you're posting a few times a day, it seems like, on your LinkedIn stream. So definitely connect and follow Tanya on LinkedIn and definitely comment and respond, share the wealth of the great content she's putting out. Before we get into like moving into the future of B2A, I do want to ask you a little bit about more on LinkedIn and posting and your thoughts because it speaks to
Mhm.
me. I need to do more of it recently, but you're doing a lot with video as well. Talk about your journey into doing video work and posting that. Is that something that you're a writer? You prefer
Yeah,
writing? You prefer video? I mean, you've got a YouTube channel.
yeah.
Lay it out for me when you're doing the video. What's the concept? How you're leveraging it more so than
Well,
anything?
to me is, speaking about, personalization, I need to be walking the walk as well. And I feel and see that video is as a further extension than just reading. It gives you a little bit more of that connectivity to the other person. And I'm not the greatest. I know I can do better, but I'm putting myself out there and I'm, every time, I feel like I'm getting stronger and more confident and, it's a much more of a flow, but it's not easy. I'm not going to lie. I mean, there was a few times where I was like doing 20, takes. I was like, this is insane. Like you got to just be just be more authentic, Tanya, because that's part of who your
Yeah.
personal brand is. But I see,
The authenticity with video is obviously something that stands out more so than text copy. Although you do such a great job writing and with the visual elements more so, but you do show your authentic self, your vulnerability, and it's a human to human element. It's that personal brand that generates your video. Kind of what
1,000%.
I'm all about. So, and I'm digging what you're doing with that. So definitely keep at it.
Yeah, so I would say that, to me, there's always a balance of videos, text. To me, it's posting every day. There's one person that I've looked to and I continue to look at is Darren McKee. He's not a marketer, but he is in some sense. But, he has been posting on this platform. And if he's listening, I think it's 2021, maybe even earlier. And he hasn't stopped. And he's now built his own brand. And he's just doing some amazing things, not just for himself and financially and his family, but he's paying it forward and giving so many resources and so many insights and so many tools to help people get to where he's at. Through, he does a monthly meeting where, he brings, a group of salespeople. Actually, it's multiple positions, job titles, job descriptions, to really help drive this platform and be better, smarter. And he's, kind of learned all the opportunities of, he's ironed out all the kinks, if you will. And so he's just been a great resource and someone who I know has done it organically from the ground up. And so he's been my admiration and drive, and just myself. It's part of who I am.
He does an amazing job, not to
Yeah.
because he does a good job from the standpoint. It's
Yeah.
authentic, it's transparent, but the part that he gives back, I like him from a sales video perspective. It speaks
Mhm.
to me in so many ways,
Mhm.
where he shares different ways to get the meeting. How are you positioning meetings? How are you leveraging video for outcomes and generation? What to do, what not to do? What's the framework for that? And he's constantly
Absolutely.
putting he's just not doing, video for the sake of video. There's a formula for better outreach. So I would say he's my video outreach guy to get meetings.
Probably how you and I met. It was probably through him in some way. I bet
Right.
you that's what it was. Yes, 1,000%, 100%. He's really he's a great human. And I haven't taken his course. I keep like wanting to. I haven't, and I might have to just do it because the referrals and the testimonials he's getting are unbelievable. There you have it, right? I might buy because of existing customers. So, it all comes full circle as we've been talking.
Since we're talking about content that resonates and content creators, you were on a podcast. I don't know, you did this about 3 months ago, so it's relevant, but
Mhm.
as somebody that does video podcasts, it's always good to shine the spotlight on others, and it shines more information about yourself.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it was my first podcast actually with Rebecca. And she's amazing. Just, a really good human as well. And we had a great conversation. And so, yes, check it out. She's on Apple, as well as Spotify, and choose on purpose, live with
Yeah,
intention.
I definitely watched the interview. I watched it on her YouTube feed, but it's doubling down on the power of video and video engagement for authenticity and visual
Yep.
social proof. That's speaks to me in a lot of ways. Now let's move to the future a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the future of B2A, business to anyone. I know AI's got a place. I know the customer experience has a place. I know there's a match between AI and
Yeah.
human human. Speak to me on that, Tanya, please.
Yeah. So, the future belongs, in my opinion, to brands that really are mastering the balance between human connection and this technology innovation. There's three trends that stand out for me. One is the physical experience, it's returning. People want to have this real world interaction, not just this digital one. The second is authenticity, authentic personalization. AI will scale that personalization, but without EQ, you will be lost in the shuffle. So they really go hand in hand. EQ was the differentiator there. And the third is human AI partnership. Technology will enhance human connection, never replace it. So the brands that get this right won't just build customers, they'll build communities, they'll build partnerships, they'll build lifetime value. And those to me are the three things that I see as we move forward.
No, I agree 100%. We've covered so much in this interview, and I'm definitely going to do some more work with you if you're up for it. We talked about, well, your awesome background from B2C, B2A, multiple industries, brand, strategic, everything that you're doing. Then we really got into the B2A philosophy,
Mhm.
poise. We talked about your resources. Get off your mask. Get off your mask and subscribe to that newsletter. We've talked about some of the great blueprints and content and where we're going in the future with business to anyone. Is there any topics or anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to give us a quick shout out or some information about?
I want to leave everyone with this, that marketing today isn't just about selling a product, it's about creating meaningful connections, building trust, and delivering experiences that resonate. Business to anyone means understanding that every interaction matters and that personalization drives long-term impact. So here's what I'll leave you guys all with. How are you showing up for your audience? Are you building a brand that connects and evolves with them? I'd love to keep this conversation going with you, Doug, and everyone else there. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, share your thoughts, and let's talk about how we can reshape this buyer journey together, because I see a lot of us doing a lot of lip smack, but nobody's walking the walk, and let's go for it. So thank you all for spending time with me. Remember, marketing is personal, so make it matter.
Make it personal, make it matter. It was great having you on, Tanya. Really appreciate the insight. Look forward to more collaboration and some further interviews as well. I'm Doug, breaking it down in layman's terms, keeping it social, leveraging video for better conversations.